beginning. Long, long ago, on the banks of the holy river Ganga, was the great city of Patliputra, the capital of a powerful kingdom. It was ruled by King Sudarshana. One day, King Sudarshana was travelling through his kingdom and heard someone reciting a verse that stated that wisdom is the most important possession a person could have. It is better than all the wealth and property in the kingdom. But the voice said that it was sad that not everyone had wisdom. This worried the king a lot because he himself had sons who were very foolish. He thought it was better to have one wise son rather than 40 foolish ones. After all, it was one moon that gave light at night, not millions of stars. It is said, thought the king, that wisdom, a gentle wife, obedient children, comfort, and health are the best things in life. The king's solution. The king continued to think deeply. Is everything based on fate only, or can we make some effort to change ourselves? And what happens to us? He wondered. I think we must make efforts to achieve something we wish for. After all, even a lion cannot get its food by simply waiting in its den. It must go out and hunt for its prey. Then it is fate whether it finds a deer or a rabbit. So fate and effort must go together, he decided. So the king called all the wise and learned men in his kingdom and asked them how they could teach his sons wisdom. Among them was Vishnu Sharma, who was considered as wise as Brihaspati, the teacher of the gods. He offered to teach the princes wisdom and policy. The king was very grateful as he gave his sons into the care of the learned sage. The hunter sets the trap. Vishnu Sharma began with a story to teach the king's sons how wise friends can find a way to overcome difficulties, even if they are not rich or powerful. Once upon a time, a shalmali tree stood on the banks of the Godavari river. Hundreds of birds roosted on that tree every night. A hunter had seen this and came there very early in the morning to catch birds. There was a crow, Wise-Eye, who was very observant, who saw the hunter stealthily come there. The crow saw him scatter rice grains and seeds on the ground to tempt the birds, arrange a net, and then hide in the bushes nearby. The crow decided to find out whether the birds were alert and wise or not. So he sat down till he saw a flight of pigeons overhead. King Pigeon's caution. It was the king of pigeons flying along with his entourage. He was a beautiful bird with a speckled neck. They noticed the grains of rice on the ground below. The pigeon king was a very wise bird. So, when he saw that his flock wanted to eat the rice, he said, "Yes, we'll have a look at that, my friends. But we must be sensible. I see no village or huts or fields here. So from where did the rice grains come to this deserted forest?" He warned the others. If we are not cautious and simply given to our greed, then we will be like the man who was destroyed by his greed for the golden bangle. The flock wanted to know the story of the tiger and the golden bangle. So the pigeon king narrated what he had seen. The tiger and the bangle. A tiger was sitting on the bank of a pool in a dense forest in the Deccan. He had bathed and was wearing a flower garland, looking very saintly. He kept calling out to passers-by, offering them a gold bangle. Most people went by without heeding him, but one greedy traveler stopped. For a moment he was cautious. One has to take some risk if any wealth is to be won. he thought. But there must be some caution before I take that risk. Suppose he is telling a lie? What are you doing here? He asked the tiger. You are a carnivorous animal. How can I trust you? I was certainly a carnivorous animal, replied the tiger, and I killed a lot of harmless animals when I was young. So, as a punishment for my wicked deeds, I lost my sons and my wife. The greedy traveler. So what are you here for? Asked the traveler again. A wise and holy person asked me to do good deeds, to repent for my sins. So here I am, old, toothless and weak. I am waiting to give this bangle to someone as a gift. But no one believes that I am harmless now, with no teeth or claws. Here is the bangle, said the tiger, holding out his paw. But you'll have to wade across the pool to get it. I am too old and feeble now to come there. The man thought that the tiger was too old to harm him. So his greed overcame him and he waded across. Halfway, he was stuck in the muddy water. The tiger immediately seized him. I should never have believed his sweet talk, thought the greedy traveler as he died. Heedless pigeons. The king pigeon's words were wise. Never allow your greed to overcome your common sense, my friends. But one of the pigeons was rebellious. He wanted to eat the grains. So he told them that wisdom does not mean they should go hungry. We should not follow only the advice of old people, he said scornfully. Otherwise, we will not achieve anything. He swooped down, and the others followed him and flew down too. As they began to peck the grains, they were caught in the net. The pigeons began to beat their wings helplessly and complain. They blamed the rebellious pigeon for having got them all into this trap. The wise pigeon king told them that getting overexcited at good fortune or feeling miserable when in trouble was foolish. They should not be frightened. He told them that when he gave a signal, all of them should lift off together, carrying the net. King Pigeon's plan. Don't blame him, said the Pigeon King. If you have a friend, then sticking to him, even in a calamity, will cause you to fall into the disaster too. We must find a way out of this trouble now. When small things combine, they can have great strength. He thought for a while. Then he told them what they should do. He would give them a signal, and immediately they must spread their wings and take flight, carrying the net along with them. He saw the hunter approaching them to catch all of them, and the Pigeon King gave a quick signal. As soon as they heard him, the pigeons took off, carrying the net along too. The hunter ran after them for a while, but he lost the birds and his net too. The Mouse King rescues the pigeons. Where should we go, O king? Asked the pigeons. To a forest near the Gandaki river, said the king. There I have a friend, Nibbles the Mouse King, who will cut through this net. The pigeons came down outside the house of the Mouse King. When the Pigeon King called out to him, the king of the mice came running out. Seeing the plight of his old friend, he started to nibble through the net. Free my friends first, please, and then help me, said the Pigeon King. Nibbles was impressed with the concern of the Pigeon King for his subjects. He and his army of mice immediately worked through the net and set the flock free. After thanking Nibbles, the flock flew away, and the Mouse King returned to his home. Wise Eye wants a friend. Wise Eye the crow had followed the pigeons from the old tree and saw this whole episode. He was very impressed, seeing the way the Mouse King had helped the pigeons. Mouse King, he called, "Will you be my friend too, please?" "And who are you?" asked the cautious Mouse King. "I am Wise Eye, the crow," he said. "I saw your wisdom when you helped the pigeons, and I would like to be friends with you." Nibbles laughed. "We are natural enemies. Crows eat mice, so how can I be your friend? Haven't you heard the story of the jackal who would have eaten the deer but for the crow?" "No," said Wise Eye. "Do tell me what the story is. I'll tell you about the friendship of a deer and a crow who lived in a grove of champak trees in Bihar," said Nibbles. The deer, the crow, and the jackal. The deer and the crow were great friends. The deer was a friendly fellow who roamed around freely in the woods. One day a jackal saw him, and his mouth watered at the thought of eating the deer. He called out to the deer and told him that he was happy to make a friend, as he had none so far. The deer, as usual, was very friendly and took him home. But the crow, sitting on a champak tree, was wary and wise. He watched the deer coming along with the jackal and asked who this was. "He wants to be friends with us," said the deer happily. "We should be careful about making friends with strangers," said the crow. "Don't you remember how the vulture made friends with the cat, called him home, and got himself killed?" "What's that?" asked the deer and the jackal. The vulture, the cat, and the birds. On the banks of the Bhagirathi, there was a fig tree. In the hollow of the tree lived an old and feeble vulture. He was blind and had lost his talons too, so he couldn't hunt. The birds that nested on the tree usually gave him some food. One day, when the birds had gone to search for food, a cunning cat that had been watching them came to the vulture. "Sir, I am a cat living on the banks of this holy river," said the cat. The vulture threatened him and asked him to go away because he was afraid the cat would attack the helpless nestlings. But the clever cat said, "I have given up eating all meat and bathe and worship every day. I have come to you to learn law, as you are so wise." The old vulture refused. The cat, however, was very persuasive. Persuading the vulture. "How can you be so unfair?" asked the cat. "You are deciding that I am unfit merely because I happen to be a cat? You must know a person's qualities. I guard the little nestlings here on this tree," said the vulture. "You are a cat and a natural enemy of these birds. If you come near, I will kill you. Sir, living here on the banks of this holy river, I have become a brahmachari. I do not eat meat. I have heard these birds praise you so much, so I wish to learn the scriptures and religious law from you. Besides, everyone says that guests must be treated with proper hospitality," said the cat. Finally, the persuasive cat managed to convince the poor vulture that it was reformed, so he permitted the cat to visit him. The poor vulture. Every day, the cat would visit the blind vulture and eat a few nestlings. Then he would leave their bones and feathers in the vulture's hollow. He would sneak away before the birds returned. When they came home, they found some of their babies missing. So they began to look around and soon found the bones of the nestlings in the vulture's hollow. They had not seen the cat, so they did not know who the real culprit was. They decided that the vulture must have killed and eaten their babies. They attacked the poor vulture and killed him. "So you see," said the crow to the deer, You must be very careful about making friends and bringing strangers into your home. But you and the deer were strangers before you became friendly, said the cunning jackal. So make me too your friend. The trusting deer. The deer agreed with the jackal and accepted him as a friend, trusting him. Then they would go out together. But the crow watched anxiously. One day, the jackal told the deer that there was a field of delicious green corn at the far end of the woods. The deer happily went with him, not knowing that the farmer was a very alert man. He had set traps for animals in his field. The jackal knew about this. Once the farmer has killed the deer, he thought, I'll also get to eat some delicious meat. The deer went to eat the corn and was trapped in the net immediately. He called out for help, but the jackal said he could not cut the cords. The crow had meanwhile come searching for the deer. How are you stuck in this net? He asked. I should have listened to you, said the deer sadly. A good friend. The crow was sensible and a good friend too. He quickly understood what must have happened. The wicked jackal must be waiting somewhere to eat his share. He knew, but he also knew that he must save his friend somehow. The crow saw the farmer coming towards the deer with a stout stick. He said, Now, my friend, you act as if you were dead. It will be nearby watching you. When I call loudly, get up and run. The deer followed his friend's advice. The farmer came up to the deer and, thinking the deer was dead, he removed the trap. Immediately, the crow began to caw loudly. The deer got up straight away and ran for his life. The angry farmer threw the stick at the deer, but it hit the jackal and killed him instead of the deer. The friends travel. So you see, said the Mouse King. Wise Eye, the crow, however, told Nibbles that he would sit on his doorstep till he became a friend of his. Gradually, Nibbles became sure of Wise Eye being a good creature, and they became friends. They discussed life in the forest and various other things. One day, Wise Eye told Nibbles that he would like to go to the Narbada forest, where the water was fragrant. His friend, Slow Toes, the tortoise, lived there and would get him lots of fish and other things to eat. Nibbles decided to go along with his friend to the new forest. Wise Eye introduced Nibbles to his friend, and Slow Toes welcomed him warmly. Then he asked Nibbles why he chose to stay in a deserted forest. The priest and the mouse. Nibbles said that there was a town called Champak, which had a college where students came from far and wide to study. One of the students was a young priest named Churakarn, who begged for his alms daily. When he had eaten, he put his begging bowl with leftover food on a shelf and went to sleep. One day, Veena, his friend, came to visit him. While talking, he found Churakarn hitting the floor with a stick repeatedly instead of conversing. He asked him why he was doing that. The mouse eats up my meal, said Churakarn. I do this to chase him away. The two friends searched and found the mouse's store of food and took it away. The mouse was upset and realized that feeding himself on another's food or charity was not good. He decided to live in a quiet forest, meditating and doing things that were right and good. Sharing wisdom. Nibbles said that he had learnt that a healthy mind and body and the company of good people is better than wealth, and that true knowledge is to know the difference between good and evil. He was happy in the forest and glad to have the crow and the tortoise for friends. They discussed the merits of sharing and giving things to others. Slow Toes spoke about various good qualities like kindness and courage. He said that one should be generous and also careful about spending. One should not, however, be petty and stingy like the jackal. He said he saved till he died of it. What is that story? Asked the Mouse King. I'll tell you all about the jackal who had so much, but wasted it by being petty, said Slow Toes as he began the jackal's story. The Imprudent Jackal. One day a great hunter, wishing to eat venison, deer's meat, went hunting in the forest. He killed a deer. As he was going home, a huge wild boar attacked him. He shot an arrow at it, but the wounded boar killed him. But the boar itself had been injured by the hunter's arrow. Soon it too fell because of its wound and died. After a little while, a jackal passed that way and saw the wild boar, the deer, the hunter. Some way off, there lay a dead snake that had been killed in the skirmish. Wow, thought the jackal. There's enough food here to last me for weeks. Now, what shall I eat first? He began to calculate for how long the food would last for him. Just then, he saw the hunter's bow with a big chunk of meat stuck on the bow horn. The Greedy Jackal. The moment he saw the scrap of meat on the bow, the jackal wanted to eat that too. Why should he let even that little bit of meat go? In spite of having plenty of food available, the jackal was so mean and greedy that he did not wish even that small scrap of meat to remain there without eating it. He felt it would be a pity not to grab that too. I'll have a little snack first, he thought, and he seized the meat on the bow. Unfortunately, as he pulled at it, the bowstring broke loose and lashed at him like a whip and killed him immediately. Trying to get even the scrap of meat, he lost his own life, while a huge and delicious feast was there, right in front of him. A new friend. Wise Eye, Slow Toes, and Nibbles became friends and were very happy, living in the forest and sharing stories and their ideas. One day, a deer with dappled skin came running through the forest where the three sat. It seemed to be running away from something. The three friends, sensing danger, promptly hid themselves. Slow Toes slid into the waters of the lake. Nibbles ran into his hole. Wise Eye flew into the branches of a tree. Wise Eye looked around from the treetop and found there was nothing to be afraid of. So he came down and called out to the others. Slow Toes came out of the water and Nibbles peeped out of his hole. They looked at the deer and welcomed him. His name was Dapple. Dapple joined the three friends and soon became comfortable, eating the lush green grass and curling up under the banyan tree. They asked him why he had been running. Prince of Kalinga. A hunter was chasing me, said Dapple, so I had to run away. I am glad to have found friends like you. Dapple had also brought some news that he shared with the others. He had heard that Rukmangada, the Prince of Kalinga, was going away with his army to defend the borders against enemies. He is camping on the banks of the Chenab river, said Dapple. The hunters say he will be coming towards this lake tomorrow on his way. This caused all of them a lot of worry and anxiety. If the army came this way, they were all in danger. The hunters would come too, to fetch food for the army. Everyone thought that it would be wiser to move away from there, as the place would be unsafe for them. But the wise Nibbles thought that Slow Toes couldn't move fast on land. He would be safer in the lake than outside. Discussion among friends. Staying hidden in the lake may be wiser and easier for Slow Toes, suggested Nibbles. Why do you say that, Nibbles? Asked his friends. Isn't it better for him to also come away with us to another part of the forest? Slow Toes cannot move fast on land, my friends, observed Nibbles. Trying to go across land, Slow Toes is likely to suffer more, like the merchant's son. What is this about the merchant's son, Nibbles? Asked the others. It is the story of a merchant's son whose efforts were enormous but were wasted. You see that the results should match the amount of hard work one puts in, shouldn't they? But in his case, they did not produce results that should have come after so much effort, said Nibbles. The others immediately wanted to hear it, so he told them the story. The Merchant's Wife. King Veerasena ruled the kingdom of Kannauj. He had a handsome son, whom he made the viceroy of Veerapura city. One day, as the prince was riding through the city, he saw a beautiful woman. She was Lavanyavati, the wife of a merchant's son. He fell in love with her, and on getting back to his palace, he sent a very lovelorn letter to her through one of the palace maids. Lavanyavati also had fallen in love with the handsome prince, but she refused to accept the letter and returned it, saying that she was a faithful wife and would only do what her husband wished. The messenger told the prince. He wondered as to how to solve this problem. The messenger suggested that perhaps a trick would obtain what they could not get by force. That's how the jackal killed the elephant, said the sly messenger. The prince wanted to know about that. The Jackal and the Elephant. Once upon a time, an elephant lived in a forest. There were also many jackals, and they looked greedily at the elephant. What a feast we would have if we could kill this elephant, whispered the jackals to one another. An old jackal said he would get the elephant for all of them. The old jackal went and bowed low before the elephant, saying, "Sir, I am from a tribe of jackals that live in this forest. We need a king, and seeing your imposing and majestic self, we feel you are the right choice as our king. Please come and be the king of our tribe." The elephant was flattered and went with the jackal. On the way, he fell into a deep trough that the jackals had covered up. He cried for help, but realized that the jackal had tricked him so that his pack might attack and kill him. The wily prince. The prince understood the advice. He called the merchant's son Charudatta and appointed him as his personal attendant. One day he told Charudatta that he had to offer worship every evening for pleasing a goddess, for which he needed a lady of good family and birth to help him with the rituals. Accordingly, Charudatta brought a lady of a good family for the worship. The prince performed the rituals, and then he gave costly gifts of jewels, perfumes, and silk. Charudatta saw this and longed for the gifts too. Therefore, the next evening he took Lavanyavati, his wife, to the prince. Charudatta had to watch the prince behave lovingly to Lavanyavati, and there was nothing he could do. Nibbles completed his story, saying that all the plans of Charudatta were wasted after all. But Slow Toes had taken off without hearing the end of the story. Tortoise in trouble. Slow Toes was going along slowly to the new place when a hunter saw him. He quickly picked the tortoise up and strung him upon a stick. The hunter had found a good dinner and walked towards his home. By then, Nibbles, Wise-Eye and Dapple had rushed in search of Slow Toes and saw him being carried away by the hunter. They were aghast. "We must make some attempt to save Slow Toes," they decided. Nibbles suggested a plan. Dapple would lie down in the hunter's path, acting dead. Wise-Eye would sit on him, pretending to peck his eyes out. The plan was carried out immediately. The hunter saw the deer lying in his path and thought he was dead. "Wow," he thought, "I am having a wonderful day today. First, I caught this tortoise, and now I have found this deer. I am going to feast and get rich too." Fooling the hunter. The hunter looked around and saw no other hunter or wild animal that might attack him. He put the tortoise down and went up to the deer. He was examining him to check if he was in fact dead. Meanwhile, Nibbles ran to where Slow Toes lay tied to the hunter's stick. He bit through the bonds and released Slow Toes, who ran as fast as he could and hid in the bushes nearby. When Dapple saw that Slow Toes was safe, he jumped up and took off into the forest. The hunter was taken aback to see that the deer was not dead at all. He gave a shout and chased him, but was no match for the deer. He returned to find that the tortoise too had vanished. He had lost both the tortoise and the deer. The four friends went off happily to their new home. The Prince's Question. Vishnu Sharma, the wise teacher, had told the princess all about winning friends. The princess thanked him and asked him if people who were friends remained so always. "No," explained the master. "Sometimes you have friends who fall apart or fight and separate. This can happen on one's own through a misunderstanding, or it can be caused by someone who is jealous of the friendship and wants the two friends to break up. Would you tell us how to understand and recognize the breakup of friendship, O revered teacher?" asked the princess. "Certainly, this is an important lesson for you," said Vishnu Sharma, as he began to narrate a story about the parting of friends, which was caused due to a misunderstanding and led to disaster. Poor Hefty. Long ago, there lived a prosperous merchant in Swarnapura, a city in South India. He saw people richer than himself and wanted to become more rich. The merchant realized that hard work would make him richer gradually. So he loaded his cart with lots of goods for sale and yoked his two strong bulls, Trusty and Hefty, to the cart and began a journey to Kashmir. On the way, Hefty broke a leg and could not move any further. The merchant had to leave him behind in the forest and go ahead after getting another bull. Poor Hefty watched sadly as Trusty went away with the merchant. He began to eat the leaves and grass in the forest, and soon his leg got better and he became fat. Often he would bellow loudly. The lion, who was the king of the forest, was drinking water at the stream when he heard the bellow. A worried king. The Lion King was worried as he didn't know where the sound came from. So he went to his den and waited. In his court were two very cunning and wicked jackals, Karataka and Damanaka. Damanaka saw the Lion King's anxiety and wondered why he had returned from the stream without drinking. Karataka was a sulky fellow who did not like to serve the king because they only got leftovers for food after the king had eaten. When the Manaka told him they should try to find out the reason for his worry, Karataka brushed him away. "Don't you know the story of the monkey and the wedge?" he asked the Manaka. "What monkey and what wedge?" asked Karataka. "It's a story that tells you not to meddle in other people's work," said Karataka. "Tell me the story," requested the Manaka. The Inquisitive Monkey. Once upon a time, in a town in South Bihar, a man found a clearing on the banks of the Dharma river and decided to get a temple constructed on it. He gave the task to a man named Shubhadatta. In the afternoon, all the workers of Shubhadatta stopped work to eat their lunch. One day, a carpenter was cutting a log of wood when it was time to break off for lunch. Since he had begun to split it, he put a wedge in the cut and went off for lunch. A troop of monkeys had come out of the forest and were leaping about at the sight. One monkey sat on the log with his legs and tail dangling in the cut. He saw the wedge and playfully he pulled it out. His legs and tail were trapped and there was nobody to get him out. He died because of his inquisitiveness. An argument. Karataka said, "So it is better not to interfere, Damanaka. It is for us who serve the king to assist him with the right advice," said Damanaka. "You know very well that this is a task for the king's prime minister, not us," argued Karataka. "We should not try to do the work that is not given to us. After all, the prime minister tells us our tasks. If we take over his role, we will get into trouble. If we try to do other people's work, our fate will be the same as the washerman's ass." "What washerman's ass?" asked the Manaka. "Don't you remember the one who tried to take over the work of the washerman's dog?" asked Karataka. "Do tell me the story," said the Manaka. "I don't remember it at all, so I don't know what you are talking about." The washerman's ass. In Banaras, there lived a washerman who had an ass and a dog. The ass was always complaining because he was kept tied to a post, whereas the dog was free to walk around wherever he pleased. One night, when the washerman was fast asleep, a thief crept into the house. The ass was very concerned because the dog didn't bark. So he prodded the dog to bark. "You leave me alone," said the dog. "The master doesn't feed me properly. If something gets stolen, he'll realize the value of having a dog to guard his house." "You selfish fellow," said the ass. "You are being disloyal. I will wake him up." And the ass began to bray loudly. His master woke up in a rage. The thief ran, so the washerman did not see him. He picked a cudgel up and beat the poor ass to death. The Manaka persuades the reluctant Karataka. "I agree that this is the Prime Minister's job," Karataka admitted the Manaka after hearing the story. "But we must rise to high positions. We can only do that if we make some effort." Karataka was not very convinced, so the Manaka gave a lot of arguments to persuade him. "People work to achieve different things, my friend, said the cunning Damanaka. Some people work for wealth, some for affection. Look at a dog. He will roll on the ground and wag his tail just to please his master. But we have to work for a greater ambition. What ambition? Asked Karataka. We wish to be ministers to the king, replied Damanaka. And for that we must take action and make a big effort, mustn't we? Finally, Karataka asked him what he proposed to do. The jackal's plan begins. So, now what do you propose to do? Asked Karataka. We must find out what has frightened the king, suggested Damanaka. Even if we have to risk going to him, I will see what his mood is and then put across some plan to make him pleased with me. Be careful, Damanaka, warned his friend Karataka. I will, assured Damanaka. I will patiently follow the king like a shadow, and when he is pleased with me, I will ask him what worries him. So Damanaka went to the Lion King's den and bowed low before him. When the king asked him to enter, he went in and sat down. He humbly told the king he had come to serve him. Damanaka flattered the king and finally asked him why he had returned without a drink of water. The king, impressed by him, told him that he heard some beast roaring and didn't know what it was. The Lion King's dilemma. Did you hear the beast roaring? Asked the worried Lion King. I did, sir, said Damanaka. Please let me find out what the danger is. Then you will know who your loyal servants are. But, sir, would you please give something to us so that we may be strong enough to defend you? The Lion King gave his skill to Damanaka, who happily went off with the meat. He and Karataka had a feast. But Karataka wondered as to how they would deal with a strange and terrible beast. Damanaka laughed. It's a bull, Karataka, no wild beast. Is that so? Said the puzzled Karataka. Then why not just tell the king? No, it is better he remains frightened. Then we will be able to fool him, said Damanaka. If the master becomes comfortable, we will be like the cat that was starved. The lion's mane. On a high and craggy mountain, there lived a fierce lion. He was very proud of his good looks and his handsome mane. But every day, when he was asleep, a little mouse that lived in a hole in his den crept out and nibbled his mane. In the morning, he found his mane looking tattered and ragged. This went on day after day, till the lion was really irritated. He tried all kinds of tricks to catch the mouse and kill it, but he failed. He was getting more and more angry. I am a lion and can kill large animals, he thought, and this silly little mouse is making my life miserable, and I am unable to catch him. What should I do? Then he heard some people talking in the village that they kept cats to catch mice. The starved cat. The lion decided to get himself a cat, since all the villagers seemed to use cats to catch mice. One day he brought a cat to catch the mouse. He flattered the cat and requested it to keep an eye on the mouse. The cat was fed plentifully and the lion talked sweetly to it. The alert cat did not allow the mouse to come near the lion. Every night, when it was time for the lion to sleep, he gave lots of food to the cat and set it to catch the mouse. For many days, the clever little mouse managed to escape the cat's clutches. But one day, the mouse peeped out of its hole. The cat was waiting for it right outside and pounced on it, killing it. After that, the lion had no use for the cat anymore, so he neglected it till it died of starvation. Persuading Hefty. So you see, said the Manaka, only if you fool the master will he think that we have served him cleverly. The jackals therefore went to Hefty. Karataka sat under a tree at a distance, and the Manaka went up to him and said, I am the keeper of this forest, sir. That is the general of the king of the forest, a mighty lion. You must come and pay your respects to the general and do as he orders. Hefty went up to Karataka and bowed to him. Karataka said, You have to come and bow humbly to the king of the forest if you wish to stay here. But we must first go to the king and tell him that we are going to present you to him. So wait till we return for you. Hefty waited patiently while the jackals went to tell the king. Persuading the king. The Manaka was not going to tell the king straight away that it was only a bull bellowing in the forest. He planned first to create a mystery so that when he finally led Hefty to him, the king might feel very grateful to the jackals for having found out the truth. He told the king that he would first check the source of the sound that had frightened him to ensure that the king was not fooled. A few days later, he told the king, Sir, a bull had been left in the forest when he broke his leg. It was his bellow your majesty heard. He wishes to pay his respects to you. So I came to ask your permission. You see, sir, it is wise to know the truth, or we will be fooled imagining a bell to be a demon. How can a bell be a demon? Asked the lion. The bell. A thief once came into the city of Brahmapura and stole a bell. He was running away into the surrounding Sri Parvata hills when he was killed by a tiger. The bell lay in the forest on the mountainside. Some days later, a troop of monkeys found the bell. They enjoyed themselves playing with it, jumping on the trees and chasing one another with the bell. They made a lot of noise ringing it. The sound echoed all around and was heard by the people in Brahmapura as well. They wondered what the noise was and soon began to create stories about it. The people believed that a terrible demon lived in the hills. When he moved, the bell rang out and he would eat up anyone who came there. Fear spread in the area, so people began to leave the town. Killing the demon. A woman named Karala lived in the town. She was clever and did not accept things blindly. She always wished to know the truth, and only then she believed something. So she went to the king and offered to find out the truth if she was rewarded suitably. The king ordered that she would be given some gold. Taking the reward, Karala set off for the mountains. On the way, she bought a lot of fruits. On the mountainside, she scattered the fruits all over the forest floor and hid herself behind a tree to wait for the demon. Soon the monkeys came. They hung up the bell on a tree and grabbed the fruits. Karala waited till they were fully involved in eating and quietly took the bell. She ran down the mountainside with the bell to the king and told him all about the demon. Hefty's progress. Sir, we have brought you the bull, said the Manaka. The king spent a lot of time talking to Hefty and gradually realized how wise the bull was. One day, Hefty asked him what became of the deer he had killed earlier in the day. The jackals will know about it, said the king. Hefty asked him to check up, and the king found that the meat was not there anymore. How could they have eaten so much meat? He wondered aloud. The wise Hefty told him that the jackals took away the meat always, eating some and wasting a lot of it. He advised the king to be a little more careful of his valuable meat, because no one had a right to take the king's treasures or property without permission. A minister should not tamper with the things belonging to the king or the kingdom, said Hefty. The king was very impressed with Hefty's honesty and service. The king's brother visits. One day, the king's brother came to visit. The king asked for a feast for Brother Lion. Once again, the king found that a deer that had been available had been eaten by the jackals. Brother Lion advised the king to place the stores in the charge of Hefty rather than the jackals. Hefty did not eat meat, so he would keep the food stores safe for the king. The king found this advice appropriate, and so he placed Hefty in charge of the stores. The jackal could not eat so freely as they did earlier. It is our own fault, mourned the Manaka, that we have lost the freedom to eat lavishly of the lion's food. It is like the man who lost a fabulous bride, or the woman who got her nose cut off, trying to help another. What are those stories? Asked Karataka. Kandarpaketu and the princess. Kanchanpura was ruled by a just king named Veera Vikrama. One day, his soldiers were taking a barber to the court, whom they had arrested. A mendicant saw them and stopped the soldiers, saying, "Don't punish him, sir. Only those who knowingly do wrong things should be punished." The soldiers took him also along to the king, and there he told his story. He was Kandarpaketu, the son of the king of the island kingdom of Sinhala. In his young days, during the course of his travel, he saw a beautiful maiden deep in the sea waters. She was wearing fabulous jewels and seated on a jewel-studded throne. As he came near her, she vanished. He followed her into the deep waters and found her to be Ratnamanjari, the princess of the Vidyadharis who lived in the sea. She had vowed to marry someone who came to her golden kingdom seeking her, so she married Kandarpaketu. Kandarpaketu's curiosity. They had been very happy together for a long time. Ratnamanjari had a painting in her chamber of a Vidyadhari female named Suvarnarekha. When she married Kandarpaketu, she warned him never to touch that picture. In the beginning, he followed her instruction, but gradually his curiosity to find out what would happen if he touched the painting increased. Why Ratnamanjari had asked him not to touch it, he continued to wonder. One day he was unable to stop his curiosity anymore. He went up to the painting and, making sure that no one was around, he reached out to touch it. As his hand touched the picture, he found himself kicked out of the golden kingdom of Ratnamanjari. I became a mendicant after that and saw what happened in the house of this poor barber, said Kandarpaketu to the king. He is not to blame. So he told the king the story of the barber. The barber and his wife. One day, Kandarpaketu stayed in a cowherd's house. He heard his wife talking to the barber's wife, who was not a good woman. The cowherd had told his wife to keep away from the barber's wife. So when he heard her talking to the barber's wife, he was very angry. He scolded his wife and tied her to a pillar in the cowshed. At night, the barber's wife quietly came there and set the cowherd's wife free to go to her lover. It was dark in the cowshed, so in her place she got herself tied to the pillar. the cowherd would only see a female tied in the shed and wouldn't know that his wife had gone out. The cowherd heard them whispering, and thinking that his wife was being disobedient again, he went into the dark cowshed and cut off her nose. Justice is done. The cowherd went back to sleep after punishing the woman he thought was his wife. His own wife later returned and set the barber's wife free. In the morning, the cowherd came to see his wife. He was stunned to see that her nose was intact. She must be a saint, he thought. I should not have tried to harm her or cast any doubts on her pure character. In spite of my cutting off her nose, it is intact. So he begged her pardon. Meanwhile, in the barber's house, his wife took his razor and howled loudly. He's cut off my nose. So the neighbors got the poor barber arrested. The king heard the truth about the incident from the mendicant and set the barber free. He punished the wives of the barber and the cowherd. The Jackal's Plan. The Manaka stories showed how people often paid for their own folly. He told Karataka that now they were starving because they had brought the bull to the Lion King. So they planned to break the friendship between the lion and the bull. We have to do some trickery, like the crow who killed the serpent, advised the Manaka. How could a crow kill a serpent? Karataka asked. That is how one has to plan some trickery to cause a rift between your enemies when both of whom are strong, said the Manaka. We must find a way to make them fight each other. Then we will be able to destroy the bull. What is the story of the crow? Asked Karataka. The Manaka began by telling him about a pair of crows who lived on a tree. In the hollow of that tree lived a large black serpent who always ate up their young nestlings. Mr. Crow's solution. Mrs. Crow was very unhappy because all her babies were killed and eaten by the snake. One day, Mr. Crow told her that he would find a way to destroy their enemy. But how? Asked Mrs. Crow. Like the little hare destroyed a mighty lion, replied Mr. Crow. In a forest on the Mandara mountain lived a very powerful and cruel lion. He attacked and ate whatever animals he found. Finally, the animals had a meeting and went to the lion to plead with him. Sir, they said, we know you have to eat other animals. We will send one animal every day to you for your food. So please stop attacking us all over the forest. The lion agreed, and every day an animal went to him and was eaten up. One day it was the turn of a little hare to be the lion's meal. This was a very clever old hare. The lion and the hare. The old hare played around in the forest and reached the lion very late. The hungry lion was in a very bad temper at having been kept waiting for so long, and all that he would get after such a long wait was one small hare. He roared, "Why are you so late? Your Majesty, I was held up by another lion on the way," said the hare. "He has ordered me to return after informing you, as he wants to eat me." "Another lion in my forest?" said the Lion King. "Take me to him at once. I'll teach him a lesson." "But your Majesty, he is a huge lion," said the old hare. "His roar is so loud that I was terrified." "Do you think it can be louder than mine?" asked the lion, even more enraged now. "I don't want him to harm you, your Majesty," said the hare. The old hare's trick. The remark of the old hare was enough to drive the lion into such a fury that he would have killed the hare right away. But he had to find the other lion first. "Harm me? What nonsense! roared the lion. You just take me to him, and I'll show him what I can do. And I'll show you too, you stupid fellow. Just take me where he is. The old hare took him to a deep well and begged him to look into it very carefully. The lion did so and found his reflection looking back at him. When he roared, he heard the echo of his own voice. The foolish lion did not recognize either his reflection or the echo of his voice. He leapt into the well to attack it and was killed. The wise old hare sat on the wall of the well, watching him float lifeless. The Prince's Anklet. I have heard this story, but what's your plan? Enquired Mrs. Crow. The king's son comes every day to bathe at the ghat. He keeps his clothes and ornaments on the bank while he bathes. You must pick the golden anklet up and fly back with it, advised Mr. Crow. What use is the prince's anklet to deal with our problem? Asked Mrs. Crow. You drop the anklet into the serpent's hollow. The prince's attendants will follow you and see the serpent near the anklet. They will kill it, said Mr. Crow. Everything happened exactly as Mr. Crow had planned. The soldiers came running, following the anklet carried by the crow. Seeing the snake in the hollow, they promptly killed it. The Manaka narrated the story to show Karataka that they could destroy the bull by trickery. Karataka agreed to help with the Manaka's plan. Wily the Manaka. The Manaka went and bowed low to the Lion King. He spoke very sweetly to him and said he had come to give him some news, but he was afraid to speak. It is something that will cause you much pain, but you must know about it, said the Manaka, posing as a humble servant. The king asked him to speak. The Manaka said that the bull had been given such a high post by the Lion King and was so trusted. But Hefty has spoken against the king and his powers, Your Majesty, said the cunning the Manaka. He is your enemy, sir. The king was deeply attached to Hefty and could not believe what the Manaka told him. But the jackal was very persuasive. The king said that they must give Hefty a chance to explain. But the Manaka warned him not to let out the secret, or it would be like the Titibha birds and the sea. Titibha birds and the sea. A couple of Titibha birds arrived on the shore of an ocean. The wife was not happy to build her nest there. At high tide, the sea will sweep away our eggs, she told her husband. The husband, however, insisted that it would be safe. So they built their nest and the wife laid her eggs in it. But the god of the sea had heard them. As she had foreseen, the high tide flooded the shore and the eggs were washed away by the sea. The wife mourned and wailed. Finally, they prayed to Garuda, the mighty king of birds, who served Lord Vishnu, preserver of the world. Garuda listened to Lord Vishnu's advice and he gave him a message to carry to the sea god. Garuda flew to give him the message. The sea god had to obey Lord Vishnu, so he returned the eggs to the Titibha birds. The Manaka misguides Hefty. We should know who the friends are. Can they stand behind the enemy? Advised the Manaka. If Hefty were to come to you with his head lowered as if to gore you, then you would know he is your enemy, wouldn't you? Said the Manaka. When the king agreed, the Manaka went to Hefty, looking worried. What is the matter, the Manaka? Asked Hefty, seeing his friend's face. The deceptive the Manaka said, I am in such distress. On one hand is my king, whom I must be loyal to, and on the other hand, you are my friend. I don't know what to do. He sighed as Hefty waited. I suppose I have to make up my mind, he said. I should not share the king's secret with anyone, but you have trusted me as a friend. So I should tell you the truth, my friend. Evil the Manaka. The truth? What about? Asked Hefty, thoroughly puzzled. The king was so fond of you, said the Manaka, but his heart has changed. What do you mean changed? Asked Hefty. The king is against you, Hefty, continued the Manaka. He wants to kill you and eat you up. I should not tell you this, but after all, I was the one who introduced you, so I am worried, he confessed. This made Hefty feel very sad, and he wondered, I have always been loyal to the king. Why should he have turned against me so suddenly? There is no way to satisfy someone who hates you without any reason, commented the tricky Damanaka. If there was a reason, we could do something about it. But kings are strange. They will forget all the good you have done and get against you for a very small thing. The Manaka wins. I wonder who has been telling the king bad things about me and caused him to be angry, Hefty talking to himself, quite unaware that he was speaking to the wily jackal who had caused the dispute. Then he said bravely, If I must die, then I'll go down fighting, said Hefty. Yes, that's how it should be, agreed the Manaka. If you find the Lion King looking fierce, flicking his tail and snarling at you when you enter, you too should be prepared to fight. Hefty went with the Manaka to the king's presence. He found the king looking grim, so he put his head down to charge. There was a fierce battle between the king and Hefty. In the combat that followed, Hefty was killed. The king lost his friend. That day, the wicked jackals had a feast, having destroyed the friendship of two good people and killing poor Hefty. The master begins a new lesson. When they had learned the wisdom of selecting the right friends, moving away from bad friends, and how to recognize deceitful friends, the princess asked Vishnu Sharma to teach them about war. The revered old teacher said he would tell them about war through the story of the swans and the peacocks. The swans and the peacocks were great friends and lived together in harmony. But this was disturbed when the swans became friendly with the crows. How did that happen, O revered master? Asked the princess. So the master began the story. The birds on Karpura Dvipa lived around a beautiful lake called Padmakeli with lovely colorful flowers in it and water birds all around it. Once they all got together and decided that they must elect a king. So they chose a beautiful swan known as Silver Plume as their king. Longbill visits Silver Plume. Silver Plume was given royal treatment by the birds. They even made a throne of lotus leaves for him. One day a crane called Longbill came from a far-off land. The king welcomed him and asked him what the news was in other countries. Lots of news, my lord, exclaimed Longbill. I was on Jambudweep near the Vindhya mountains. A peacock named Jewel Plume is the king there. While I was looking for food, his attendants found me. I introduced myself as one of your subordinates and praised you. When the attendants asked Longbill about Karpura Dvipa, he said it was heavenly and asked them to come and see it. It was not a dry land like Jambudvipa, he told them. The birds were very upset hearing the praise of another country and king. It's like the weaver birds and the monkeys, sir, said Longbill. The weaver birds and the monkeys. A shalmali tree stood on the banks of a canal flowing down to the Narmada river. In its hollows, weaver birds had nested, protected from the cold and rains. One day, a storm broke out. a troop of monkeys came to the tree looking for shelter from the downpour. The birds looked at the monkeys standing under the tree, wet and shivering in the cold. The birds were very proud that they were safe from the bad weather. They watched the monkeys making all kinds of efforts to keep warm. But they were so wet that there did not seem to be any way at all for them to get warm. The birds felt very superior looking at them because they were dry and warm. They whispered among themselves about the stupid monkeys. "You should have been wise like us and built nests," jeered the birds. The revenge of the monkeys. The monkeys had been listening to the birds whispering among themselves, and soon they caught the whispers. They were very upset and angry, hearing the birds mocking them. "They are so proud of their nests. We'll show them," decided the vengeful monkeys. They waited for the rain to stop. Then they sat together and wondered how to punish the arrogant birds who had dared to laugh at them. One of the monkeys had seen that the birds nested on the tree under which they had taken shelter during the rain. There were eggs and young nestlings in the nests he saw. He told the others what he had seen, and the monkeys decided on a wicked vengeance on the birds. As soon as the rain stopped, they attacked the nests and destroyed all the birds' eggs and nestlings. Longbill has an argument. "There's no point talking sense to stupid people, sir," said Longbill. He said the birds were very angry and pecked at him for daring to criticize their king. The crane, however, defended his words in praise of his own king and his kingdom. The soldiers of Jewel Plume abused him, but still the crane held on to his own opinion. The king laughed at him. "Didn't you realize your strength and the strength of the soldiers who surrounded you?" asked the king. "You must take care to examine your own strength and weakness and compare them to those of your enemies before you confront them." "Why do you say that, sir?" asked Longbill. "If you don't do that, you will end up like the donkey in the tiger's skin," said the king, and he began to tell him the story. The donkey in a tiger's skin. A washerman named Vilasa lived in Hastinapur. He had a donkey who carried his heavy loads, but the washerman never had enough to feed him, so the poor donkey became weak. One day Vilasa found a tiger's skin lying on a road. While he was on his rounds, he picked it up, and then slowly an idea began to form in his head. "This skin is very useful," he thought. "I will put it on my donkey and let him loose to graze in a field of corn. If anyone sees an animal in the field, they will think it is a tiger. They'll be so frightened that they usually run away." The washerman felt he had come up with a brilliant idea, and that night he put the tiger's skin on his donkey and let him out near the cornfields to graze. The poor donkey's fate. Soon the washerman's donkey began to look plump and healthy. He was not exhausted carrying his master's loads on his rounds. The farmer to whom the cornfields belonged was not very happy. He would find his corn had been grazed every day. He began to keep watch at night, holding a stout cudgel. Soon he found that a tiger crept into his field at night. "Tigers don't eat corn," thought the farmer, puzzled. But he kept watch regularly. He put a guard armed with a bow and arrow to watch his field. One day, when the donkey was grazing in the field, the guard saw him. The donkey saw some movement and thought it was a female donkey coming to make friends. He brayed loudly. The guard was furious, finding that it was a donkey and not a tiger grazing in his cornfield. The guard shot an arrow and killed the donkey immediately. Longbill explains. Longbill heard the king's story but said, I told them, sir, that you will also become petty, like a petty master, if you serve him. They asked the crane, what do you mean? Haven't you ever looked into trick mirrors? In them, a fat man will appear thin, and a giant will look like a mouse, replied Longbill. Have you never heard the story of the elephant who was deceived by moonlight? The attendants asked him what the story was. So the crane told them the story of the elephant and the hare. It was a story in which even the might of King Elephant could not defeat the trickery of a wise old hare. He was deceived by a hare and some moonlight. His herd had to withdraw from a lake because of their foolish master. The Elephant's Dilemma. Long ago in a forest, there lived a herd of elephants. They had a lake where they would regularly drink and bathe. During one rainy season, however, there was very little rain, so their lake became dry. The elephants needed a lot of water. Soon they became desperate, so they went to their king and pleaded with him. Sir, our lake has run dry. The little animals can find sufficient water in puddles and small streams, but we need a lot of water. Please find a new source or we will all die of thirst. King Elephant found another lake in the forest and led his herd to it. The elephants were delighted and rushed into it. They ignored the hares that lived on the banks. Many of the little hares were crushed under the massive feet of the elephants and died. The elephant and the hare. The hares were in panic. They called a meeting and wondered how to deal with the herd of elephants. Finally, an old hare said, You leave it to me. Let me think. I'll find some way to solve our problem. The hares were puzzled how the old one was going to find a solution, but they had faith in him, and so they left it to him. The old one sat and thought for a while. The elephant is a huge creature. I am only a tiny hare. He will listen only to someone bigger and more important than he. So I must appear bigger and be more important. Having decided this, the old hare climbed on top of a hill one night. He called out to King Elephant, Sir, I am a messenger from Lord Moon, he said. The elephant bowed to him and asked him what Lord Moon's message was. Lord Moon's messenger. Lord Moon is very angry, sir, said the old hare. You have entered his lake and killed the hares. They are the guardians of his lake. This worried King Elephant, who replied, It was done by mistake, sir. We are very sorry, but we only wanted to drink water and crushed the hares without intending to. What shall we do now? The old hare said, You must come to the lake. You will see Lord Moon trembling with rage. There you must apologize to him and then leave the lake forever. That night, the old hare led King Elephant to the lake. The reflection of the moon shivered on the ripples, and King Elephant believed that Lord Moon was trembling with rage. King Elephant apologized, and in a while he left the place with his herd. The hares were delighted. The trick had succeeded when strength could not. Longbill's challenge. Longbill told his king that he challenged the soldiers of Jambudweep, telling them that Silver Plume was the greatest king in the world. The angry soldiers took him to their king Jewel Plume and presented him as a wicked crane who was criticizing their country and king. Longbill said he was from Karpura Dweepa. A vulture sitting nearby asked him who the prime minister in that kingdom was. Chakravaka the goose, said Longbill. He is learned in all the scriptures. He claimed that the king of Karpuradvipa was the emperor over Jambudvipa as well. This was disputed, and King Jewel Plume said the matter would be decided through a war. "Tell your king to prepare for war," said Jewel Plume. So Longbill asked him to send his messenger to his master along with him to carry the message of war. The parrot's argument. King Jewel Plume appointed a parrot to go with Longbill to Karpuradvipa as his messenger. But the parrot objected. "Sir, I will go," said the parrot, "but not with this wicked crane. It is said that bad things will happen even to good people if we accompany an evil person." The king was not sure if there was any sense in what the parrot said, so he asked him to explain. "Sir, we should not stay with or go along with wicked people," explained the parrot. "It is like the story of the heron who stayed with a crow and a quail who went with a crow. Both were killed, and all because of their association with the wicked crow." "Tell us the story," ordered King Jewel Plume. So the parrot told them the stories of the heron, the quail, and the crow. The heron, the crow, and the traveler. Far away on the road to Ujjaini was a large tree on which a heron and a crow lived. One day a traveler carrying a bow and arrows sat down to rest under the tree on his way to the city. He put down his bow and arrows and was so tired that he soon fell asleep. The sun rose high and the day was hot. As it moved across the sky, its rays fell directly on the face of the sleeping traveler. The heron, who had been away for a while, returned and saw the traveler fast asleep under the tree where he lived. He felt very sorry for him, with the sun falling on his face. "Poor fellow," thought the heron, "he must be tired." So he does not even realize that the sun is falling directly on his face. The jealous crow. He was a kind-hearted bird, so he looked around to see how he could protect the traveler from the direct heat of the sun's rays. He tried to hold a leafy twig to provide him with shade, but it was heavy and he couldn't hold it for long. Besides, the sun was moving along the sky. Finally, the kind-hearted heron spread out his wings and shielded him from the sun's rays. The traveler slept comfortably, unaware of the heron's kindness. The crow saw the heron's act of kindness. He had always been very envious and decided to play a trick. He let his droppings fall into the traveler's mouth. This woke the sleeping fellow up. He was disgusted and angry. He only saw the heron, and thinking him responsible for the droppings, the traveler shot the poor heron. The quail and the crow. All the birds were going on a pilgrimage to the seashore to worship the king of birds, Garuda. A quail decided to go along in the company of a crow. On the way, there was a cowherd walking along with a pot of curds on his head. The crow would swoop down and dip into the pot and eat some of the curd repeatedly. The cowherd felt this once and looked up. The crow was scared and immediately flew off. The quail, unaware of the crow's theft, was happily flying along. The cowherd saw the quail and thought that it was the quail who had been stealing his curd. He picked a stone up and hit the quail. The poor quail fell and was caught and killed by the cowherd. Now, sir, you know what happens if we live with or travel with wicked people, said the parrot. False sweetness. Sir, said Longbill, narrating this to King Silverplume. I tried to tell the parrot that I wasn't the wicked fellow, but he was not ready to trust me. The parrot said that people who are wicked often speak very sweetly, and then he told a story about a foolish man who trusted his wife's sweet words so much that he agreed to carry her and her lover too on his head. Longbill asked him what the story was, there was a town named Yavanashri, said the parrot, where a carriage maker lived with his wife. He was called Mandamati, the duffer. His wife was a woman of bad character, but Mandamati was not ready to believe anything bad about her because he had never himself seen her go with her lover. So he believed that she was a very good woman. The foolish husband. Mandamati decided to check up how his wife behaved in his absence. So one day he told her he had to work in another city and would return late. But he came back and hid under the bed in his house. When he left, the wife invited her lover home. They sat chatting on the bed. But the wife soon realized that her husband was hiding under the bed. So she began to praise him and speak about her great devotion to him. The wife's lover was confused, hearing her praise for her husband, the carriage maker, so much while she did not say anything to praise her lover. But Mandamati, listening to her praise, was very impressed by her devotion. The foolish fellow was so delighted that he lifted up the bed with his wife and the lover still sitting on it and danced around for joy. So one should not trust sweet words, concluded the parrot. Chakravaka advises Silverplume. King Silverplume heard all that Longbill said, and they waited along with Chakravaka, the goose, who was the Prime Minister, for the parrot to come. But Chakravaka wished to speak privately to the king. He advised the king to send a spy into the enemy's kingdom before going into war. The spy should go there to live in some respectable place and become familiar with the place and the people. He should also be accompanied by another friend who would be the messenger to bring news from the spy to King Silverplume. Meanwhile, Chakravaka advised the king that they would begin to build their fortifications and prepare a store of food in case they needed more provisions during war. Thus, they would try for peace, but be ready if they had to fight a war. Whom to trust? A visitor was announced. While Silverplume discussed the details with his minister, Meghavarna, the king of crows, had come from the island kingdom of Sinhala and wished to pay homage to Silverplume. King Silverplume was very happy. Meghavarna, he knew, had travelled far and wide and would therefore be very experienced and wise. But Chakravaka was worried. "Let us not forget, sir," said the Prime Minister, "that Meghavarna is not a water bird like us. He may be wise, but we should be careful of anyone who tries to make friends with people outside their own group." The king asked him why he said that. So Chakravaka reminded him of the jackal who left his pack because he was dyed blue in color. "What was that story, Chakravaka?" asked the king. So the wise goose narrated the story of the blue jackal. The blue jackal. A jackal strayed into a town on the outskirts of a forest. Trying to hide himself, he fell into a large vat of indigo. He was a bright blue color when he jumped out. "Ah," he thought as he looked at himself, "I look so elegant and different now. I won't go and live with the pack of jackals because I am so superior. I shall be the king of the forest." So he returned to the forest and told the jackals that he had been especially blessed by the goddess of the forest, so they must now pay homage to him. The jackals agreed and bowed to him, but they found that he made friends with the tigers and the lions and ignored them totally, treating them with great contempt. This made the jackals very angry, and they decided to teach him a lesson. The jackal's punishment. All the jackal consulted with one another about a suitable way to punish the blue jackal. A wise old jackal came up with a plan. "We know the nature of jackals, my friends," said the old jackal. "We know that even if he is blue in color, he is actually a jackal. This is not known to the lions and the tigers. so we have to expose him before his new friends and destroy him. The jackals asked him how they could do this, so he told them his plan. That night, all the jackals formed a pack and began howling. The blue jackal too was forced by his nature to start howling with the pack. The lions and the tigers saw him and realized that he was only a jackal. Angry at being deceived, a tiger killed him. So you see, sir, said Chakravaka, we must trust our own species always. Meeting the messenger, Silverplume understood that it was wiser to examine the outsider from a distance before deciding whether to make friends with him or not. The parrot has come first, sir, so let us call him in first and then invite King Meghavarna, advised Chakravaka. So the parrot was called and then Meghavarna was invited. The parrot was an arrogant messenger. He told King Silverplume to accept King Jewelplume's superiority or to leave his kingdom. Silverplume was furious at the parrot. Meghavarna jumped up to punish the arrogant messenger, but wise Chakravaka calmed him down. The parrot is only a messenger, sir, he said. We must hear him without reacting to his words, even if he is rude, because we would like to know all that he has to say before we decide what to do. So they sent off the parrot courteously. The enemy prepares. The parrot returned to Jambudvip and gave a glowing account of Karpuradvipa. It was worth conquering, decided King Jewelplume, and stated his minister Doordarshi the vulture. The king checked with the astrologer what would be a good time to go into battle. The army must be inspected and the strength of the enemy noted. It was decided that a small army commanded by efficient generals would be more effective than a huge army. A spy from Karpuradvipa heard all the details and flew back to his kingdom to inform King Silverplume about the preparations. He also told the king that there was a spy among their own people who was giving information to Jambudvip. That must be the crow, said the minister. But he was going to attack the parrot for rudeness, observed Silverplume. Haven't you heard of King Shudraka and his faithful servant? King Shudraka employs Veeravara. I heard this story from the flamingo's daughter, whom I loved long ago, said the king. Sometimes strangers turn out to be more loyal than dear ones. A warrior named Veeravara came to King Shudraka looking for work. He said he would have to be paid 500 gold coins every day. He would serve the king with his sword and his 2 strong arms. The courtiers advised the king to try out this man's service. So the king employed him. The king found that every day Veeravara would give half his wages to learned people, a quarter of it to the poor and the needy, and managed to live on a quarter of it himself. Then he would stand guard in the palace and not move till he was ordered. One night the king heard someone sobbing and sent Veeravara to check who it was. Veeravara's loyalty. Veeravara went into the dark streets to find out who was crying. The king was worried, so he too followed Veeravara. The warrior Veeravara saw a beautiful lady dressed in fabulous clothes and jewels, crying. Veeravara asked her who was she and why she was weeping. I am Shudraka's fortune, said the lady. I have lived a glorious life so far, but he will die in 3 days, and then all the good fortune I have will be gone. Is there anything that I could do to make King Shudraka's fortune stay with him? Asked Veeravara. Yes, replied the lady. Your son Shaktidhar is a very auspicious person. If his head is offered as a sacrifice to the goddess, then Shudraka will live for 100 years. Veeravara promptly went to his house and told his wife and son all about the lady's words. His wife and son too agreed to serve their king with equal loyalty. A king's reward. Veeravara's family went to the temple and he sacrificed his son and offered his head to the goddess. Miserable without his son, Veeravara killed himself also with his sword. His unhappy wife too did not wish to live without her husband and her son, so she too killed herself with the same sword. Shudraka was horrified at the terrible deaths and very unhappy that he had failed to see the worth of this great warrior. He decided to kill himself too, as he felt he did not deserve to live or to be a king. As he drew out his sword, the goddess appeared. She brought Veeravara and his family back to life. Veeravara, when questioned, merely said that a lady had wept but had vanished when he came there. The king was so pleased that he told the court about Veeravara's deeds and made him the prince of Karnataka. The minister's wisdom. So you see, Chakravaka, said Silver Plume, not all strangers are evil. There can be some like Veeravara who will serve their master's interest even at the cost of their own life or by sacrificing what is so dear to them. I agree, sir, said Chakravaka humbly. But a minister, a physician, and a teacher must always speak the truth to benefit a person even if the truth is hurtful. So, I must tell you, still to be careful of crows, sir. Why do you say that, O wise Chakravaka? Asked the king. Let me share a story with you, sir, said the minister. This is the story of a barber who became so greedy for money and wealth that he killed a Buddhist monk and in the bargain lost his own life too. Tell me the story, said Silver Plume. The Greedy Barber. Long ago in Ayodhya, there lived a warrior named Chudamani. He saw everyone around him becoming prosperous and wished to be as rich as they. So he began to worship Lord Shiva and practiced severe austerities. Finally, the Lord was pleased with his worship and appeared before him. Chudamani pleaded with him for wealth and the Lord gave him a boon, telling him, Go home, shave your head and then hide a strong cudgel in your hand. A monk will come that way. Hit him with the cudgel and kill him. He will turn into a golden jar. After that, you will never be poor. Chudamani did as he was told, and soon he had a golden jar and was rich. The barber who had shaved his head saw this and decided to imitate him to get wealthy. The barber's end. The barber went home and shaved his head. Then he hid himself behind the door of his house and waited for a monk to pass by. What he did not know was that Chudamani had performed austerities and worship and had gained merit by doing all that. He wanted to get wealthy by simply killing a monk, not by gaining merit. So, when he saw a monk finally passing by near his house, he ran out with the cudgel and hit him. But the monk just died. He did not turn into a golden jar. The king's soldiers saw him killing the poor monk and arrested him. The greedy barber was hauled off to the court and punished for having killed an innocent monk. And that was the end of the barber. It is merit that should be recognized, sir, said Chakravaka, taking care to decide who our friends and enemies are. The war begins. The enemy troops of Jambudweep were reported to have camped in the Ghats, a little beyond the border of Karpuradweepa. So Chakravaka suggested that they should prepare to attack them before they had an opportunity to lay siege to the capital of Karpuradweepa. King Jewel Plume has not taken the advice of his minister, the wise vulture Durdarshi, explained Chakravaka. He has rushed into the battle. So we are better prepared. It is always better to attack when the enemy is tired or in disarray. So let us attack them now. The army of King Silver Plume was ready and they attacked the forces of Jambudweep. Many of their soldiers and generals were killed. King Jewel Plume was unhappy and he consulted the old vulture once more. What did we do wrong? He asked. A wise king does not neglect the advice of wise men, even if he himself is learned, said Durdarshi. War councils. Sir, the minister can only advise the one who is willing to listen, said the old vulture. I cannot guide you if you are going to do foolish things in spite of my advice. That is why I kept quiet. King Jewelbloom apologized to his minister, saying that he had depended only on the physical strength of his army and not understood the wisdom of Doordarshi's advice. Please tell me how I can save the rest of my army, requested the king. We must go back to the Vindhya mountains. No, said Doordarshi. We will first destroy our enemy by causing conflict and then go back. Get ready to blockade their fort. The spies of Karpuradvipa reported this to Chakravaka immediately. King Silverplume was worried. How will we handle this blockade? He asked his minister. Sir, identify those who are efficient in your army and give them rich gifts, advised Chakravaka. War preparations. Chakravaka was a wise minister and had a lot of advice for King Silverplume. He knew that great wisdom is required to fight a war. One should not simply charge against a powerful enemy. If a man fights with an elephant, he will be trampled to death, sir, said Chakravaka. So, we should be careful in the battle against a powerful enemy like King Jewelplume. He insisted that they must fortify themselves properly. One archer on the ramparts of a fort can fight hundreds of warriors, he said. The fort must have a deep trench, high ramparts, arms and water, and there should be mountains around. 7 things are essential for a fort. Sir, a large size, difficulty in reaching or entering it, enough water, food and fuel, and entrance and exit. The king listened to him carefully, for what he said was very valuable. Chakravaka's wisdom. Sir, said the wise minister, work should be given to the people who are experienced and skilled in doing that particular task. Someone who is good at the study of scriptures cannot build a fort. This was a piece of sound advice and was accepted by the king. Chakravaka also insisted that they should store sufficient grains and food in the fort. After all, he observed, we cannot eat jewels and riches. We can eat only food, and the army as well as the citizens within the fort would need enough to eat during the war. Therefore, a strong fort was ready to deal with the siege by the enemy forces by the time they attacked. It had sufficient food and armaments too for the defense. The soldiers and the citizens were ready for the battle and the hardships it would bring. Chakravaka tries to stop the crows. The crane who had gone to spy in the enemy camp had told King Silverplume and Chakravaka that the blockade was being prepared. The king did not understand why Chakravaka wanted him to spend so much money giving gifts at a time like this. Meanwhile, Meghavarna, the Crow King, came and offered to go out and survey the blockade. He would also show them his own courage. But Chakravaka did not trust the crows, so he prevented this. Politely he said, you are a king, and therefore you should not go out to confront the enemy. Stay here while the soldiers deal with this. In the kingdom of Jambudweep, meanwhile, the wise old vulture, Doordarshi, was advising the king Jewelplume about the battle formations to be used during the war. He was trying to ensure that his brilliant but hot-headed king does not go into battle in an impulsive way. The betrayal. King Jewelplume finally realized that his minister was wise and he should have listened to his counsel earlier. But now, having reached Karpuradvipa with all the preparations of the war, there was no way they could turn back. If they turned away now, it would bring them great dishonor. He asked Doordarshi why he had stopped him earlier, but the wise old vulture said, there is no point in showing a mirror to a blind man, sir. At that time you were too blinded by your own ideas to hear what I was saying. So I kept quiet. There was a fierce battle at the gates of the fort, but the crows were treacherous They set fire to the houses inside the fort. They set up a cry that the fort had fallen. The army of the water birds withdrew to the lake. The end of the war. King Silverplume was extremely sad, since his kingdom had been betrayed by the crows whom he had befriended and treated with courtesy. He too went slowly to the lake with the rest of his forces. One of his generals, the Saras, was helping him. Silverplume asked the Saras to leave him and try to save himself instead. He named his son Chudamani as his successor, but the Saras was devoted to his king. He said he would die defending him and the fort rather than let his king face the enemy alone. When a cock attacked Silverplume, the Saras threw himself at the attacker. He saved Silverplume, pushing him into the lake, and died fighting. King Jewelplume, the victor, took over the fort. Vishnu Sharma completed the chapter on war, teaching the princes how to handle it with caution and wisdom. The opponents make peace. The princes had learnt about the war through the stories of the swans and the peacocks. Vishnu Sharma told them that even the greatest kings finally get tired of war. The swans had been defeated by the peacocks. King Jewelplume had plundered the fort and taken away a lot of wealth from Karpuradvipa to his own kingdom. But both the kingdoms did not want a long and destructive war. They wanted to make peace. So the prime ministers of both the kingdoms decided to consult each other and work out a peaceful settlement. Durdarshi, the vulture, and Chakravaka, the goose, got together to create a peace. How did that happen? Asked the princes. So Vishnu Sharma told them the story of the peace drawn up by the swans and the peacocks after the war was over. The king discusses the defeat. King Silverplume was talking to Chakravaka after the war. Who do you think set fire to our fort and the houses in it? He asked. I wonder if it was a spy from the enemy's camp or one of our own who betrayed us, leaving the fort to be destroyed and plundered. I suspect this was done by Meghavarna, the crow, whom you had befriended, sir, replied Chakravaka. There was no reason for him to come to you earlier. Now we can't see him or his people anywhere. The king sadly said, it was all destiny that caused it. But Chakravaka said firmly, no sir, we blame destiny when things go wrong. But actually, it is our own failure to do the right thing or to listen to good advice that causes our trouble. It is like the foolish tortoise who wouldn't listen to his friends. The endangered lake. The king Silverplume wanted to know what Chakravaka meant about the foolish tortoise. So he told the story to the king. In the kingdom of Magda, long ago, there was a beautiful lake. Many birds and water creatures lived there in harmony. Among them were two lovely swans, Sankata and Vikata, who were friends with a tortoise who also lived in the lake. One day, some fishermen came there, and the three friends heard them talking. Tomorrow, said one of the fishermen, we will cast our nets in this lake and catch the fish and other creatures. They camped close by in the forest. The tortoise, in a panic, turned to his friends and asked, did you hear what they said? What shall we do to escape? Let's wait till the morning, said the swans. We will think of something by then. After that, we'll decide. We should plan, otherwise we will die, said the tortoise. The three fishes. The tortoise told them the story of the three fishes. They lived in this lake, began the tortoise, and they faced the same situation that we are facing now. Some fishermen had decided to lay nets to catch all the fish in the lake. The three fishes consulted one another. The first fish decided that the best thing to do would be to go to another lake. So he said goodbye to his friends and went away. When the other two discussed it and the second fish decided There was no point doing anything now. When the trouble arose, he would take action, he said, like the woman who was able to fool her husband, the merchant, even when she tried to protect her lover in front of him. The third fish did not know that story, so he asked about it. Then the second fish told it to him. The Wicked Wife. In Vikramapura, long ago, there lived a merchant and his wife. She was a wicked woman who was in love with a servant in the house. One day, the merchant saw her giving a kiss to the servant and was very angry. But the merchant's wife was a cunning woman. When she saw that her husband had seen her with the servant, she began to shout, "Look at this fellow. He's a thief. He steals the camphor and eats it. I found out by smelling it on him." The servant also began wailing that he didn't wish to work in a house with such a terrible mistress. "I will leave this place now," he said. The husband was so simple that he believed her and spoke kindly to the servant, asking him to stay. Thus, the merchant's wife managed to fool her husband even though he had seen her being unfaithful. The fish and their fate. She wasn't a good woman, but the story shows that it is the presence of mind that saves us from disaster, said the second fish. The third fish was not very sensible and could not make up his mind what to do. He was a fellow who waited for something good to turn up or happen. He could not make fast decisions, so he just stayed in the lake with his friend and waited, hoping for the best. The second fish had spent the night working on a plan, and when morning came, he was ready with it. But the third fish had simply gone to sleep, hoping for the best when the time came. The foolish fish. Morning came. The first fish had already left for a safe place. The second fish had thought out a plan. The third one hoped everything would work out fine in the end. The fishermen waited till it was light and came as they had said earlier, carrying their nets. They cast their nets over the waters and began swooping in the fish. They caught a lot of fish, and among them were the two friends as well. The second fish stayed in the net quietly and acted as if it had been dead. When the fishermen pulled in the nets, the second fish waited till it found an opening and jumped out back into the safety of the lake and swam away. But the third fish kept waiting, hoping that by some miracle it would be saved. But the fishermen simply hauled him in and killed him. An escape plan. The tortoise's story was told so that the swans might plan in advance for their safety. The three friends thought about several plans, but there was always one difficulty. The swans could fly, but the tortoise couldn't. "How will I go with you both?" wondered the tortoise. Finally, they came up with a good plan. The two swans would fly holding a stick between them in their beaks. The tortoise would grip the stick with his teeth and hang on to it. That way, they could fly carrying the tortoise too and reach another lake safely. Early next morning, the swans found a stick and arranged the tortoise in the center to grab it as they took flight. When all was ready, the swans told the tortoise to be careful of the dangers. Otherwise, it will be like the silly cranes who stood around while the mongoose ate up their nestlings, said the swan. The cranes and the mongoose. On the mountain of Gridrakutta, there was a large fig tree. Many cranes had built their nests on it. In a hollow at its base lived an old snake. It used to climb up the tree and eat up the fledglings of the cranes. The cranes were very distressed. They held a meeting to find some way of stopping the snake from eating their young ones. A mongoose lived in a burrow near the tree. The cranes decided to lure him into the snake's hollow by throwing the bits of fish along the route to it. The mongoose will follow the trail and reach the snake. Then it will kill the snake, said the cranes. So they began to collect the bits of meat and scatter them on the floor of the forest along the trail where the mongoose was sure to see it. The plan goes wrong. The mongoose came out of its burrow the next day and saw the meat lying on the ground. He was tempted, but he was a cautious fellow. He wondered if this was some kind of trap set by a hunter perhaps. So he watched from inside his hollow. In a day or two he realized there was no hunter around. So he felt confident. Some flying birds must have dropped it here, he thought. He went out and ate one piece and then another and another. Following the trail, he reached the hollow in which the snake lived. They are natural enemies. The mongoose attacked the snake and soon killed it. The cranes were very happy, but they had not realized the danger from the mongoose. It heard the nestlings chirping in the tree, so it climbed up the tree and ate them up. Warning the tortoise. "What are you trying to tell me?" asked the tortoise. "You have to be alert to all the dangers before you undertake a plan," said the swans. "When we are flying to the new lake, you must be very alert. People will see us as we fly and will comment on it. You must not reply to them, no matter what they say. Otherwise, you will lose grip and fall to your death." The swans warned the tortoise. The tortoise gave them a very contemptuous look and said, "I am not so silly." The swans took off with the tortoise gripping the stick. While they flew over the forest and trees, there was no trouble. The tortoise imagined that he too was flying like the birds. Trouble began as they flew over the villages and the towns. People saw the strange sight of a tortoise being carried by two swans on a stick and were very excited. The foolish tortoise. As they flew over a village, people looked up in amazement, seeing the swans carrying the tortoise. They pointed out the strange sight to one another and cheered and shouted. At first, the tortoise was very happy to be the cause for so much sensation. He sailed along happily, but soon he could hear their voices clearly. "Look, a tortoise! He is flying!" "He is not flying, he is holding on to the stick. What will happen if he slips or lets the stick go?" "Silly, he'll fall, of course." "Wow, then we'll have a feast. I will make curry with the meat." No, we'll roast the meat." The tortoise was getting really angry hearing all the comments. The last comment infuriated him thoroughly. "You will eat ashes," he said angrily. The foolish tortoise immediately lost his hold on the stick, crashed to the ground and died. News of the enemy. That is why I said that one must listen to good advice from friends, said Chakravaka to King Silverplume. The king sighed because it was too late to repair the damage caused by his defeat. Just then, the spy they had sent returned to tell them that it had indeed been Meghavarna the crow who had betrayed them and burnt the fort. He added that the king of Jambudweep was very pleased with Meghavarna and wanted to make him king of Karpuradweepa. But his minister Durdarshi, the old vulture, stopped him, saying that this was not right. "Sir, the good and meritorious must be rewarded generously, but a person who has performed a low and mean trick, even if it is favorable to you, should never be given a high post or rewarded," advised Jewel Plume's minister. The sage helps a mouse. Durdarshi told King Jewel Plume the story of an arrogant mouse to illustrate his point of view. Long ago in a forest, there lived a sage named Mahatapas. One day, as he was meditating, a mouse fleeing from a cat jumped into his lap. Mahatapas gave it shelter and fed it grains. Soon it grew fat and contented. When the cat attacked the mouse, the sage transformed the mouse into a cat. So the mouse was not frightened of it, because now it was also a cat. Some days later, a dog attacked the cat. When the dog attacked it, the sage changed it into a dog so that it might defend itself. The mouse, who was now a dog, was very happy in his new shape. The sage allowed it to remain a dog. The ungrateful mouse. One day it so happened that a tiger came sniffing around the sage's hut. It saw the dog and chased it. The dog was frightened out of its wits, seeing the huge tiger rushing after it, snarling. The sage once more, taking pity on the poor animal, transformed the dog into a tiger. The mouse was very proud to be a tiger. He roamed around, feeling powerful and strong. But in the sage's mind, it was always a mouse. So he treated it with the same kindness. People commented that the sage treated the tiger like a mouse always. This upset the tiger very much. As long as the sage is alive, I will be considered a mouse and not a tiger, he thought. So he attacked the sage, who promptly turned him back into a mouse. Advice about rewarding the unworthy. So you see, sir, said the vulture, an unworthy person should not be given undue reward. It is not easy to hold a kingdom like Karpura Dvipa, sir, advised the vulture. You must find a good solution. If you give the charge to someone like Meghavarna, the Crow King, he will deceive you like he deceived King Jewel Plume earlier. He called the king's attention to the old story in which the crane deceived the fish. What is that story, Doordarshi? Asked the king. Sir, it is the story of a crane that cheated the fish till he was caught out by a crab who was smarter than the fish, replied the vulture. Do tell me the story, my dear, as I am unaware of it, and I get to know so much from your stories, said King Jewel Plume. The wily crane and the fish. Therefore Doordarshi told him the story of the crane, the fish and the crab. In the kingdom of Malwa was a beautiful lake full of lilies. In it there lived many fish and water creatures like crabs, frogs, toads and tadpoles. A crane also lived there. The crane was old and feeble and found it difficult to catch fish. So he worked out a plan to catch and eat them. One day he told the fish, I am not going to eat any more. Why? Asked the fish. I heard some fishermen talking the other day. They said they are going to catch all the fish in this lake. There will be nothing for me to eat later, and I am old, so I decided to stop eating. What will happen to us? Wondered the panic-stricken fish. We should shift from this lake, but we can't move. How terrible! What should we do? The cunning crane. The crane was just waiting to be asked. So he said, I can fly, so it will be possible for me to ferry you in my beak one at a time to a new lake if you wish. The fish were very excited. They discussed it among themselves. We can be safely transported and go to a new lake, said one fish. Yes, and we will feel as if we are flying, said one young fish, thoroughly excited at the thought of flying through the air. So the fish agreed to the crane's plan without realizing that he was planning something quite different for them. He had no intention of rescuing them. He had just found an easy way to arrange his meals. Every day, the crane would take one fish in his beak and fly away, saying he was taking it to the new lake. Actually, he would eat it up on the way. The crane and the crab. A crab who lived in the lake saw the crane taking the fish one by one to safety. He too wished to get away from the danger that he thought was hanging over the lake. So one day he requested the crane to take him to the new lake. The crane was delighted. Aha! Today I shall feast on the crab, he thought. It will be a wonderful change from all the fish I have been eating. So he readily agreed. The next day he took off with the crab in his beak. As they came near the place where the crane ate the fish, the crab saw all the fish's bones lying around. He realized suddenly what the crane was up to. The crab immediately gripped the crane's neck with its claws, killing it. Wise advice. So you see, sir, even if we are to make Meghavarna a viceroy, we should not expect that he will send us the taxes we demand. After all, he did deceive King Jewel Plume, posing as his friend, said Doordarshi. It is no use dreaming of what will happen in the future, as we will be as disappointed as the Brahmin who broke the pot. What do you mean? Asked King Jewel Plume. Sir, it is not advisable to think of a future happening when we are not sure of it. Instead, we should make our present situation strong, advised the old vulture. What was it you said about the Brahmin breaking a pot? Asked the king. What does that have to do with Meghavarna? Oh, that! It's a story, sir, said the Durdarshi. That is an example of what I suggested. The Brahmin's pot. Devasharma was a Brahmin who lived in a town called Devakota. It was the custom among prosperous families to invite Brahmins on festive days for a feast and then give them gifts, sometimes grain, sometimes a goat or a cow. Once Devasharma was invited during the festival of Mahasakranti for a feast. After the festivities and the feast were over, he was presented a pot full of barley. Devasharma came back happily carrying the pot. The journey to his village was long. In the heat, carrying the heavy pot of barley, it was very tedious. He put the pot in his hut carefully. He was so tired with the long walk carrying the pot in the heat that he stretched out on a mat near the pot and fell asleep, and he began dreaming. Big dreams. He dreamt that he was selling the pot of barley in the market and got 10 cowries for it. Then he was buying more earthenware and selling them. He was getting richer with each new dream. The dreams got bigger and bigger. When the Brahmin had dreamt that he had sold the pots, then he collected new goods with the money he had earned. He would buy and sell the new goods and earn even more. Then he had become so rich that he was able to buy silk and dresses and then got richer day by day. He had a fabulous house and married 4 women. He would do nothing at all and have lots of servants and his 4 wives to look after him. Broken dreams. I will love the youngest and most beautiful one more than my other wives, he dreamt. They will be jealous of one another and will try to please me. They will want me to love each of them more, so each one will try to do something special to look after me. I shall be like a king, emperor. Wow! As he continued to dream, he thought, and I will expect them to look after me with lots of respect and courtesy. If they do not do that properly, or if they neglect me in any way, I will beat them with a stick. When he fell asleep, there had been a stick lying close by. His hand fell on the stick, and he picked it up to beat his imaginary wives. The stick hit the pot and broke it, spilling the barley. The Brahmin's dreams also broke. Taking counsel. Therefore, sir, let us not imagine that Meghavarna the Crow King will be more loyal to you than he has been to King Silver Plume and the kingdom of Karpuradvipa, said the wise old vulture Durdarshi. I think you are right, Durdarshi, said the king, thinking over everything that he had heard. I had thought that if we left Meghavarna in charge here of Karpuradvipa, he would be able to send us things from here to increase the prosperity of our kingdom. But that does not seem likely. He thought for a while and then asked the old vulture what would be the best thing to do at this stage. Sir, the monsoon will soon be here, and with the heavy rains we shall be unable to fly south to our own kingdom, said Durdarshi. That is true, replied King Jewel Plume. We have to get back too. A wise minister. How can we just leave Karpuradvipa without anyone in charge of it? Asked the king. Sir, we have won the battle. Was it by our strength or by our clever trick that we did so? Asked the vulture. By the clever plan that you suggested, of course, said Jewel Plume. We have thus shown the enemy that we are capable of defeating them somehow, and we have destroyed their fort, establishing the fact that we are superior, advised the vulture. Now we should make a peace treaty with them and go back to our kingdom. Why do you suggest this, Doordarshi? Asked the king. Sir, the swans are our equals in strength. We won by a clever trick, not through strength. It is always wise to make an ally of an enemy who is equal in strength, said the wise minister. We should not be like Sunda and Upasunda. Sunda and Upasunda. It was clear that Doordarshi had a story ready. So Jewel Plume asked him what it was. Long, long ago, there lived two brothers named Sunda and Upasunda, who were Rakshasas, demons. They wished to gain enough power to rule the three worlds. So they began to worship Lord Shiva. In order to prove that they were worthy, they behaved in a very disciplined way and were very strict in following all the rituals and in performing austerities. Lord Shiva was very pleased with them and appeared before them to grant a boon. But the other gods were worried about what the two would ask and what Lord Shiva would grant them. So Goddess Saraswati intervened so that they might forget their request and say something that was sure to enrage Lord Shiva. If you are pleased with us, Lord, said the brothers, please gift us your consort, Goddess Parvati. Shiva is judge. Lord Shiva was of course furious, but having agreed to grant the boon they asked for, he was helpless. He had to gift them Goddess Parvati. The two demons were completely infatuated with the beauty of the Parvati. The brothers were competing with each other to impress her. Therefore, very soon they began to quarrel with each other. They realized they would need someone to judge their dispute. Lord Shiva was waiting for an opportunity. He transformed himself into a Brahmin and came to the place where the two brothers were fighting. Here is a learned man, thought the brothers, and they decided to ask for his opinion to settle their quarrel. We have won this beautiful lady by our combined efforts, sir, said the brothers. Please help us decide to which of us she belongs. Each of you must prove his strength, suggested the learned Brahmin. A strong ally. It was explained to the brothers that they were warriors, unlike the Brahmins or the merchants or manual workers. So they would have to prove their strength through a combat. The brothers agreed to a trial of strength. They began a duel that ended very soon. They were so violent that they killed each other quickly. That is why it is better that we ally ourselves with an equal, explained the wise old minister of King Jewel Plume. So that we may kill each other, exclaimed the king. No, sir, said Doordarshi. It is necessary to ensure that both sides are equal, that they will not be able to win against each other in a fair combat. Then the best thing to do is to make the enemy into a strong ally. Are you saying that we must make peace with the swans? Asked the king. Qualities of a king. We will make friends with the enemy we defeated, asked Jewel Plume, who found this was unbelievable. If you remember, sir, I did not advise you to start this war, said Doordarshi. What makes you think that Silver Plume is a good king? Asked Jewel Plume, wishing to learn something from his wise minister. There are some qualities, sir, that are required in a good ruler, and King Silver Plume has all of them, said Doordarshi. What are those qualities, my wise friend? Asked the king, curious to know more. He is honest, so he will not betray a friend. He is noble, so he will not be petty or mean, explained the wise vulture. He is pious, so people are ready to support him. He has many friends and has won battles. Therefore, sir, it will be wise to have him for a friend. Which ally to avoid? Meanwhile, in the camp of the swans, King Silverplume was consulting his minister Chakravaka, a spy was sent again to the camp of King Jewelplume to find out whatever he could and return with the news. The king asked Chakravaka, whose help should not be asked for during the war. Never use a child, an old or a sick person, a coward or a greedy person, or one who takes advice from too many people, counseled Chakravaka. It is also not wise to ally oneself with the people who stay in another country or have many enemies who cannot handle the problems of an army or who are dishonest and not pious. What are the choices a king has during the war? The king wished to know. A king has 6 choices: peace, war, an expedition into the enemy's territory, lay siege to a kingdom, seek shelter, or to practice deceit. News from Jambudweep. How does one deal with enemies, Chakravaka? Asked the king Silverplume. There are 4 ways, sir, as told us in the scriptures, explained the wise minister. We can make peace with them, win them over with gifts, punish them, or create discord among them to weaken them. A messenger had come from King Jewelplume of Jambudweep. The king asked him to be presented and wanted to know the message sent by the king of Jambudweep. He was surprised to learn that King Jewelplume had offered to make peace, so he consulted Chakravaka. Sir, it seems that though Durdarshi, the wise vulture, has proposed peace, King Jewelplume has not agreed yet. He is happy to have defeated us, said Chakravaka. So do we accept the peace or not? Wondered the king. It is better that King Jewelplume faces some trouble. Then he will be more willing to make peace. Spies bring news. How can we do that? Asked Silverplume. There is Mahabala, the Heron King of the Sinhala Island. Let him create some disturbance for King Jewelplume first. The king agreed, and therefore a secret message was sent to Mahabala through Vichitra, a crane. Meanwhile, the spy who had been sent to the king of Jambudweep returned with more news. He said that Durdarshi had called Meghavarna, the Crow King, to the court to get information about King Silverplume, with whom he had been friendly for a long time. King Silverplume is wise and noble. His minister Chakravaka is wise and brilliant. I have never met any minister like him, said Meghavarna. Then how could you deceive them? Asked King Jewelplume. It was a challenge to outwit them, said Meghavarna. Chakravaka knew my character right away, but the king was so noble that I could fool him, like the Brahmin with the goat. The Brahmin's goat. King Jewelplume was curious to know about the Brahmin with the goat, so Meghavarna told him the story. In a hut in a forest, long ago, there lived a Brahmin. He was invited to a ritual sacrifice in the town nearby. After the ceremony and the feast was over, he was given a goat as a gift. He was very happy, and picking up the goat, he put it across his shoulders and began to walk home through the forest. In the forest, there were 3 robbers who had not managed to get much that day. So when they saw the Brahmin going along with the goat, they thought this was a good chance to test their skills to get the goat from the fellow by using their wits. Let us delude him, they decided. Each of us will tell him he is carrying a dog. The puzzled Brahmin. So the first robber met him on the way and cheerfully asked him, "Hello friend, why are you carrying a dog on your shoulders?" "What a silly remark," said the Brahmin. "Can't you see it's a goat?" "Is it?" asked the robber. "Well, if you say so, that is fine." The Brahmin went along on his way. After a few miles, he was hailed by the second robber, who said, "Hey my friend, why are you carrying a dog on your shoulders instead of letting it walk?" This time the Brahmin was puzzled. "What? Dog again?" he thought. "I am carrying a goat, and both these fellows asked me why I am carrying a dog. I had better check. And so he decided to put the goat on the ground and look at it carefully. He checked it thoroughly and found it was actually a goat. Still puzzled, he picked it up again and walked on. The Brahmin loses his goat. The Brahmin was now thoroughly confused about whether it was a goat or a dog that he was carrying home. A few miles ahead, the third robber stopped him, saying, "Why are you carrying a dog? It is a disgrace for a Brahmin to carry a dog on his shoulders." This time, the Brahmin was frightened because 3 people had told him that it was a dog. He thought there was some terrible magic that made a dog look like a goat to him. Or was it some ghost which appeared a goat to him but turned into a dog while sitting on his shoulders? The scared Brahmin immediately dropped the goat and ran all the way home, frightened out of his wits. The robbers had managed to fool him properly. Coming out of their hideout, they picked the goat up and had a great feast in the forest. The lion's followers. "You see, sir," said Meghavarna, who was telling the story. "A saintly person can be fooled by a wicked man, even to the extent of killing himself." "How do you say that?" asked the king. "There is the story of Chitrakarna, sir," said Meghavarna. So he told Chitrakarna's story to the king. In a forest far away, a lion was the king. He was called King Big Head. He had in his court 3 creatures, a tiger, a jackal and a crow. The 3 fellows hung around the lion. When he hunted down some prey, they too would share the king's feast. One day, the 3 found a strange creature who had strayed into the forest and lost touch with his herd. They heard his story and took him to meet the lion. He was a camel named Chitrakarna, and soon he too became a part of the king's entourage. Wicked advisors. It was the monsoon season and the rain fell heavily. The lion was unable to go out and hunt. As a result, his 3 followers were also starving. The 3 wicked fellows made a plan to let the king himself kill Chitrakarna. In any case, he was not like them. He ate thorns and leaves. The tiger wondered whether this would be possible. "Of course it will," said the crow. "Hunger will make a person attack even near and dear ones, and the king is hungry." They went to the lion. He asked them if they had found any food, but they all shook their heads sadly. "Nothing, my lord," said the crow. "How will we live?" said the hungry lion. "We can't, my lord," continued the cunning crow, "since we will not eat what is available either." Fooling the lion. The lion looked around to see what was available. All he could see was the forest wet with rain and his 3 followers. Chitrakarna was chewing some thorns nearby. "What is available here?" asked the king lion. "Chitrakarna," whispered the crow, going close to him. The king was indignant. "I have given him shelter, and you are asking me to kill him when I have told him he will be safe here? How can I break my promise to him?" "My lord," said the crow in a very sweet and humble voice, "suppose he offers himself to you, then there can be no harm in your killing him, can there?" This made the lion think very hard. He was hungry after all, and what use was a king if he starved to death? So by keeping silent, he agreed to do what the crow and his friends wanted. The grateful camel. The crow spoke loudly so that Chitrakarna might hear him. "Sir, I haven't found any food in the forest, though I have searched for so long. Please accept my body as your food now, as I cannot bear to see you hungry." The king lion refused. Then the jackal came up and offered himself as food, and again the king refused. The same thing was repeated with the tiger, and again the lion refused. Chitrakarna had been listening to this. So he dutifully went up to the lion and said, "Sir, why don't you eat me? It is the least I can do to repay your kindness to me." The tiger, the jackal, and the crow were waiting for this. The tiger immediately leapt onto him and killed Chitrakarna. The lion and his followers had a feast. So Meghavarna told the king how even a noble lion could be fooled by wicked and cunning words. Living with the enemy. A good man will always think that others also will be as honest as he is, said Meghavarna. That is why he can be fooled easily. King Jewel Plume asked Meghavarna how he had managed to live for so long with his enemy, King Silver Plume, whom he actually thought of as his enemy. "Sir, I wished for personal profit. If one has some reason to gain something personally, one will even learn to live with an enemy," replied Meghavarna. "Haven't you heard the story of the serpent and the frogs, sir?" "What's that story?" asked the king. "The serpent was willing to carry frogs on his back to gain his ends," replied Meghavarna. The king requested him to tell the story of the serpent and the frogs. The cunning snake. There was a garden that was very neglected and lonely. It had a lake also in it. There a snake lived, barely getting enough to eat to live. He was old and weak and could not move around to find his prey. So he lay down on the shore of the lake and waited. One day a frog saw him there and asked out of curiosity, "Why do you keep lying here? I don't see you hunting for food." "There is nothing anyone can do for me, my friend," said the cunning snake. "I am suffering because of the evil deeds I committed earlier in my life." "Why? What were those deeds?" asked the little frog. "Never mind, just leave me to my fate," said the snake. But the little frog was very persistent and kept asking him till finally, acting as if he had been very reluctant, the snake told a story. The Brahmin curses the snake. The snake lived in Brahmapura long ago, and there too lived a Brahmin named Kondinya with a very good son named Sushil. The snake bit Sushil one day, and the boy died. It was a terrible moment when Kondinya came to know that his son was dead. He fell down unconscious out of grief and shock. As the news spread, many people came to console Kondinya. Among them was a student named Kapila. He spoke about life and death and how it was necessary to accept that death is a natural thing for all living creatures. "Sorrow comes when we are ignorant," said Kapila. "Once you understand things, sorrow will reduce with time." But Kondinya was so unhappy that he wished to go away into the forest and live there, spending his days in meditation and prayer. But he cursed the snake before he left. The snake and the frogs. Kondinya cursed the snake, saying that he would carry frogs on his back all his life. The little frog heard the story of the snake, and later he went to his king and told him all about it. The king of the frogs wanted to see the truth of this, so he visited the snake the next day and asked him to carry him on his back. The snake took him on his back and carried him around all over the place. The next day, the snake was slow and sluggish. He could not move easily. "What happened to you?" asked the frog king. "Oh, sir," sighed the snake, "I have nothing to eat, so I am exhausted. How can I move fast?" The frog king told him he could eat the frogs in the lake. The cunning snake had got what he wanted. He ate the frogs and finally the frog king too. The stubborn king. Meghavarna completed the story and smiled, saying, "So you see, sir, when there is a motive to gain something, you can carry the enemy on your back too. That was why I made friends with the Swan King. Durdarshi told the king not to get influenced by the stories Meghavarna was telling. That is all in the past, sir, he advised the king. Let us look at the future and make friends with King Silverplume. He is a worthy ally to have. But King Jewelplume was so full of the pride of his victory that he would not listen to his wise minister. He wanted to see the Swan King as a subordinate, not an equal. But suddenly the parrot messenger arrived, looking worried. What happened? Asked the king. Why do you look so worried? What is the news? Our kingdom, Jambudweep, has been attacked by the Crane King of Sinhala, said the parrot. An impatient king, King Jewelplume, was furious and exclaimed that he would immediately destroy the enemy. Wise old Durdarshi smiled to himself. He realized that this must be the work of Chakravaka, the clever minister of the Swan King. Why do you smile, Durdarshi? Asked the king. For 2 reasons, sir, replied the old vulture. Firstly, it is not worthy of a king to make a noise about who his friends or enemies are. Secondly, it is unwise to take hasty decisions like the Brahmin. Maybe you are right, said King Jewelplume. But what do you mean when you say hasty decisions like the Brahmin? Oh, it's a story about a Brahmin and his mongoose. The king was curious to hear the story, and so the wise old minister told it to him. The Brahmin and the mongoose. A Brahmin named Madhav lived in Ujjaini. He had a wife and a little son was born to them. The Brahmin had a pet mongoose, whom he also loved very dearly. He had brought him home as a baby and reared him with love and care. One day, his wife went to the river to have a bath. When she was going out, she asked her husband to look after the baby till she returned. It so happened that a little while later, a man came to call the Brahmin to the house of a merchant who had died recently. A funeral rite had to be performed over there. The Brahmin earned money through such services, so it was necessary for him to go. What should I do? He wondered. How can I leave the baby alone? Then remembering his pet mongoose, he left the baby in his care. The mongoose and the snake. The mongoose was a very faithful pet, and he loved the little baby. While he sat guard near the sleeping baby, a snake came into the room. The mongoose saw that he was slithering closer to the baby's cradle, so he attacked him immediately and killed him. When the Brahmin returned after performing the rites, he saw the bloodstains all over the place, and the mongoose too with the bloodstains on its mouth. He thought the mongoose had attacked his baby and was furious. In his anger, he picked a stout stick up and killed the mongoose. When he entered the house, he saw the dead snake near the cradle in which his baby was fast asleep. The Brahmin was miserable. He realized that his pet mongoose had saved his baby. He deeply repented killing his beloved pet so thoughtlessly. The king's consent. So you see, sir, it is not sensible to be impatient and act in a hurry, advised the old vulture. One should not do things when one is highly emotional or angry, drunk, full of pride or greed, or be too attached to anything. Then one will make mistakes. So what do you think we should do now? Asked the king. It is better to make peace with King Silverplume, sir, advised the wise old vulture again. What we have heard from Meghavarna and others has convinced me that the Swan King and his minister are wise and noble, and it is only a conceited fool who will not follow such a path of peace with them. King Jewelplume was worried and fed up, so he agreed to follow Durdarshi's advice. Having got the king's consent, Durdarshi, the vulture, began preparations for peace. The Swan King gets news. In the court of the Swan King, meanwhile, the crane who was a spy had arrived with the news. "My lord," said the crane to Chakravaka, "Durdarshi, the wise old vulture who is prime minister to the king of Jambudweep, is coming here to discuss an offer of peace." King Silverplume wondered whether there could be any hidden reason, perhaps, for the visit. But Chakravaka laughed at his fears. "Sir, Durdarshi is very noble and far-sighted, like his name implies," advised Chakravaka. "A child who has burnt his lips with hot milk will blow even into whey before drinking it. But Durdarshi knows when somebody is to be suspected and when he is to be trusted. Tell me more about this," requested King Silverplume. Chakravaka's wisdom. The king and Chakravaka talked for a long time as they discussed the merits of trusting people or distrusting them. "Noble-minded people," said the wise minister, "know when and whom to trust. But those who are not sensible swing from one extreme to another. Sometimes they will trust people completely and be fooled by their behavior. At other times, they will suspect everybody and everything, even when there is no reasonable cause. I'll give an example," he went on. "Sometimes a swan sees the reflection of a star in the lake and tries to eat it, thinking it is a white lotus, but he gets nothing. Then in the morning he sees a real lotus, but imagines it is the reflection he saw last night, so he does not even go near it. So what do we do now, my wise friend?" asked the king. "Prepare for his arrival, sir, with gifts and jewels," said Chakravaka. Peace talks begin. Durdarshi came to the court of Karpuradvipa and was welcomed warmly by the king and by Chakravaka. They began to discuss the purpose of his visit. Durdarshi said that different people had to be attracted in different ways. For instance, a greedy man would only be attracted by wealth, but only the truth attracts a wise person. "Therefore, I will come straight to the truth," said Durdarshi. "I have come to make peace with you on behalf of King Jewelplume of Jambudweep." "When you say you will make peace, what exactly do you mean?" asked King Silverplume. "There are various kinds of treaties for peace, my lord," explained Durdarshi. "There are treaties between equals, treaties by marriage alliances, treaties for achieving a future objective, for helping each other mutually, for saving one's life, and for many other reasons." Treaty based on truth. The noble Swan King spoke to Durdarshi politely and asked him what kind of peace he would like to suggest. "I am old, my lord," said the vulture. "I know that the body and everything in the world will die. So the most important thing is to be friends with noble and good people." "And how do we make out the noble and good people, my wise friend?" asked the king. "They are truthful, my lord," replied Durdarshi. "It is best if a peace treaty is made between friends on the basis of truth. Our friendship should be based on truth." King Silverplume was so pleased that he agreed, and many rich gifts were given to Durdarshi as a token of goodwill. He returned to King Jewelplume accompanied by Chakravaka, the wise minister of King Silverplume of Karpuradvipa. Peace at last. Durdarshi reached the court of King Jewelplume of Jambudweep with the minister Chakravaka of the kingdom of Karpuradvipa. The wise vulture had already told his king about what to expect and what to do when the representative from Karpuradvipa came. So King Jewelplume welcomed Chakravaka and discussed the peace treaty with him and approved of it. He gave many gifts too to the minister to confirm his goodwill. Then they sent him back to his country. Both the kingdoms had made honorable peace. King Jewelplume then asked Durdarshi what they should do next. "Let us return to our kingdom in the Vindhyas, sir," said Durdarshi, "before the monsoon rains begin." So they all returned to their kingdoms, and peace came to the land once more. The last word. Vishnu Sharma had taught all that was necessary to the princes. Then he asked them if there was anything else they would like to know from him. The princes had become wiser by learning to understand the details of how to run a kingdom. They had understood what kind of people they must trust, what noble and good is, how to rule people by recognizing their qualities, and how to make friends with the right kind of persons. They thanked their revered teacher. They were now ready to go back to their father and assist him. The great book of good counsel ends with thanks to King Dhavala Chandra, who was the patron, and to the writer of the Hitopdesha Narayan Pandit.
Thanks for watching. Do like, share, subscribe to Sahil Book House.